Giants GM Joe Schoen just pretty much broke the internet after speaking to the media at the NFL Combine. Our New York Post Giants beat writer, Paul Schwartz, is out in Indy, and of course, he was present for the Schoen's media availability. He's here now to break it all down for us. Paul, thanks for hopping on, man, because I need you to break this down. I don't speak GM. Joe Schoen talked to the media. Obviously, the first things that have been clipped and put out all throughout social media is what he said about Daniel Jones. What was your biggest takeaway from what Joe Schoen said about quarterback Daniel Jones?
Well, I'd like to. If he broke the internet, how are we even doing this? And can I throw away my phone? I don't think he said much about Daniel Jones really. Daniel Jones is starting to throw, which sounded very impressive until you go in the back of your head and say, wait a second, Daniel Jones is coming back from a knee injury. This is not Kodai Senga with the Mets. If they said he's starting to throw, it's like that's big time news. Daniel Jones is throwing from a stationary position on the field. He's on schedule, on track, as Joe Schoen said. He said in the spring, he might even be cleared to do some 7-on-7 work and some, individual stuff against air, throwing to receivers. So, he's on pace to be ready to roll for training camp, which is good. As far as, his hold on the starting job, Joe Schoen said again, he expects him to be the starting quarterback. He said they're going to speak with Tyrod Taylor's reps here in Indy to see about maybe bringing him back. He said he's a pro. He was not only good with Daniel Jones, but also with Tommy DeVito. So, I thought the door was going to be fairly much closed on Tyrod at 34 coming back. That is not the case. It could be open. And, look, Joe Schoen said, unequivocally, just because Daniel Jones, the expectation is he will be the starting quarterback to start the 2024 season. That does not preclude the Giants from taking a quarterback somewhere in the draft. They will sign a veteran, if not Tyrod Taylor, then somebody else in free agency. And, once you mention quarterback, the Giants, and the draft, that I think is what you're referring to as far as breaking the internet. They will do their intel on all these quarterbacks. Will they trade up? Shane didn't sound like overly optimistic that they would trade up. They'd probably have to get to 2 or 3, but they're going to do all intel, not just on Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and, May from North Carolina. They're going to do it on all these other guys, J.J. McCarthy and Penix and Bo Nix and everybody. And, could they take a quarterback in the draft fairly high? Sure they could.
Yeah, I wonder if they do go up from 6, what they're going to have to give up to go get that. He mentioned having 4 premium picks, 4 picks within the first, I believe, 71 draft picks of the NFL draft. So all eyes are on Joe Schoen and what he's going to do with the quarterback situation for the Giants. And the fact that Daniel Jones is going to be throwing and participating in routes on air and individuals in the spring after hurting that knee. What was that, October, November? That just goes to show how great the training staffs are in the NFL now, to where an ACL injury doesn't end a career like it used to, and is getting these guys back out there. Plus, it goes to show how Daniel Jones is attacking his rehab. He's attacking it like he wants to be the day one starter next season. But all eyes are going to be on these quarterbacks when they come out and they participate in the on-the-field workouts at the Combine in their pro days. He didn't mention much on Saquon Barkley and Xavier McQuay. What were your takeaways from, again, the GM talk when speaking about those 2 players?
Well, I thought he said a decent amount on both of them, actually. Okay. Without giving up any, negotiating. Saquon, it hasn't started yet. His rep was here, a new rep from CAA, so they will start those negotiations and talk about it. But this is what I thought was interesting about what Joe Schoen said. Look, he said we want him back. He's a leader. He's a captain. He's still a good player. I still believe in him. But this is what I thought was interesting, Brandon. I think we've all grown. Don't forget, this started in the bye week of 2022 when they first started negotiating a new deal for Saquon, and they've had offers and offers and deals, and Saquon rejected them all. So this is not the first rodeo with the Giants and Saquon. This is what Shane said about that road that they've taken.
Okay.
I think we've all grown. Saquon, myself, the organization, through the last 12, 13, 14 months, and Saquon may be in a different place now than he was then in terms of understanding the market and the business side of it. Translation. Saquon now knows, according to Joe Schoen, or should know what his market value is. And if he does, then maybe the Giants and Saquon can come to a deal. If he doesn't, then there will be no deal. There's more cap space, right? Every team got, a lot more than they thought. But that doesn't mean Joe Schoen is just going to say, look, just throw in an extra $2 million at Saquon, we'll get the deal done. He has a value. He has comps. The Giants are very big on comps. Your comp is pure numbers, right? What did Saquon do versus this guy versus this guy versus this guy? And Joe Schoen did say things that are baked in to this as far as I said, Saquon's leadership, the fact that he's a great citizen in the community, the fact that he's a captain. But that only goes so far. And the big thing when Joe Schoen was asked, are you going to take all those tangible things into consideration? And is that going to be the main thing, or is it the market value of running backs? And Joe Schoen said the market value of running backs. And that market value is probably not going to be great. And if Saquon, through this process, understands that, maybe something can get done.
So, Paul, before we talk about Xavier McKinney, we got to stay on this, because after you just broke down that both sides understand the business side of it, and you've heard things from Saquon throughout the course of this offseason, talking about how he understands the business side and how there may be a fresh start somewhere else. Just after listening to both sides, do you think Saquon Barkley is going to be a New York Giant at the start of the next season?
A really tough one. Now, Joe Schoen said, we're not saying we can't franchise him. That would cost $12.1 million, but they're not going to franchise him. There's no reason for Joe Schoen to say we're not franchising him, because that is something you can hold over a player. You know what I mean? Yep. Look, we can just put the franchise tag on you, and then you're not going anywhere. You get $12 million. You don't have that security you wanted, right? So they can do that. There's no reason to take that off the table. But I think it's going to be a real leap of faith to think that between now and free agency starts, which is coming soon, that the Giants will come to a deal where Saquon will say, I will take that, and I don't want to see what I'm worth on the open market. I just don't think that's plausible, because it's likely, or it's certainly possible, that there's some team out there that will give Saquon more than the Giants right now are thinking of giving him. So I don't think they're going to prevent them from coming off free agency. I don't think the deal is going to be that sweet for Saquon that he's going to say, I want to be a Giant for life. This is the money I need. Let's go. I think he's going to go to free agency. And if he does, I think there's a good chance somebody will offer him more money. And, that means he will probably go elsewhere.
Another guy that just might test the open market, played 100% of the defensive 100% of the defensive snaps last season, Xavier McKinney. He just might test that open market as well. What did Joe Schoen say? And can you break down the GM talk for us?
His rep won't be in town until Friday.
Okay.
So nothing, they'll start talking on Friday. You have a whole week, of stuff going on here. But Friday is when they will get together. Here's something, Brandon. You know the league. Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, right? They both played safety for the Titans, right?
Yep.
They both got second contracts from the Titans for big money. Byard got $70 million. I think Hooker got $33 million. What does that have to do with the Giants?
Giants defensive coordinator. Yep.
Bowen, the new defensive coordinator, was on that staff in Tennessee and was the coordinator at the tail end of that. Joe Schoen said safeties are very important in this scheme. Okay, so it's not like the Giants are going to say, look, we have a new defense now, and it doesn't value safety. So it's going to be an issue, though. They can put the transition tag on Xavier McKinney for $13.9 million. That would be a great savings. That would be a lot less than about, 17 for the franchise tag. And then with the transition tag, which is something the Giants are definitely considering. I wrote that last week in the New York Post. Yep. That's the money, 13.4 on the transition tag. And McKinney can go on the open market, see if he can get a better deal, and then the Giants have the right to match that offer, whatever it is, and keep him, or say we're not matching it, and Xavier McKinney leaves with no compensation. From what Xavier McKinney has said since the season ended and what he's tweeted, he thinks he's told us he thinks he's the best safety in the league, definitely the best safety on the market. So that's not, he's not getting Derwin James $19 million. He's not getting Minka Fitzpatrick $18 million. So I think the benchmarks in my mind, maybe not in his mind, are guys like Jesse Bates and Harrison Smith, which make $16 million a year as top end safeties. Do the Giants want to go that high? I don't know. You're going to have to pay something for this guy. He's 24 years old. He's healthy. He's a really good player. So we'll see about that. I could definitely see him going elsewhere also, but the Giants do want to keep him.
Yeah, when you talk about Jesse Bates III, you look at what he was able to do this season, all-pro down there in Atlanta. He played lights out for them, and you talk about the money, him not getting top dollar for a safety, but still adding a lot of value to the Atlanta Falcons defense. You also wonder what they might be thinking, because when you break down the fact, when you throw the names out there, Hooker and Byard, the Giants also have a young Dane Belton going into his third year this season. If they don't re-sign or get Xavier McKinney back in the building, back on this team, you wonder if they could have plans for a young Dane Belton as well. Jason Pinnock has pretty much solidified his spot as this team's strong safety in the future. Obviously, he may have to compete for it depending on who they bring in. But if Xavier McKinney leaves, Dane Belton, I believe, is someone that Bowen could make into a Byard or Amani Hooker. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Joe Schoen talked about being on the coach's headset during and after the Commanders game. Can you break that down for us? Because I've never heard a GM being on that coach's headset before.
Actually, for 3 games.
Okay, 3 games.
Games. He said he was only going to do it for 1 game, the Washington game. He went on the headset. They won the game, and he said, well, I can't get off the headset now, right? These guys are all crazy. They're all superstitious. So he went on again. This was the Tommy DeVito run, remember? Okay. He gets on again, they win. He gets on again, they win. He gets on again in New Orleans, they lose. He said, okay, that's enough. He said it is unusual. Now, other GMs have done it, but I agree with you, Brandon. It is not standard marching orders at all. The coaching headset, for fans who don't know, all the coaches are communicating on the headsets, and they're talking. Don't forget, Brian Daboll isn't calling the plays. So he's got the headset to Mike Kafka up in the booth and him calling the plays. He's got the defensive headset, so he knows what Wink is calling and this and that. And so Joe Schoen said he's always been interested in knowing how that communication goes. Now, this was right around the time where Jay Glazer had a report that Wink Martindale was not happy and the communication was not good, and this may lead to a parting of the ways. So Joe Schoen said that was not part of it. Believe that if you will, but he clearly wanted to go on this headset and see what's going on as far as the communication game day. Schoen said it was fascinating. What usually would have to happen is Joe Schoen's at the game. He said the sight lines, you've been in Washington, FedEx Field, the sight lines are so bad, he basically can't see the game anyway. So he said, let me put on a headset and I can be involved in what's going on. He said he did not say a word. That's not his lane. He said, I'm not a coach. I just listen. He thought the communication was good. And he said all the questions he had for the head coach after the game, right? What went into your thinking to punt? What happened on that play? Why wasn't that guy blocked? How did that play go so wide open? Now he heard it live in the headset. The safety didn't come over. Saquon wasn't on the field because the guy was hurt. He's hearing it all in real time. He said it was fascinating. He said that's all it was. Was he snooping? Well, he's the GM. He's allowed to snoop, but it is something that GMs usually do not do. And afterwards, he said he thought the communication was good. Obviously, Brian Daboll is still here. Wink Martindale is not still here. So take from that what you will.
That's pretty interesting, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because you don't hear GMs talk about being on the headset, and you wondered, I threw a little, I wanted to know if it had something to do with the Wink Martindale and the Brian Daboll situation, because you as the GM being the head of it all, you kind of need to make sure there's no beef within your head coaches and your coordinators. So I wondered there if it was something that was a situation he felt like he needed to monitor, but at the end of the day, regardless if it was was or it wasn't. I believe that he comes away as a better GM by being able to hear the day-to-day or just what happens with the coaches and the communication on game day. Last but not least, Paul, this Giants offensive line for, I guess, since I've moved back to New York has kind of been just up in all types of chaos. Joe Schoen talked about how hard it is to evaluate offensive linemen in the era of spread offenses. What did you take away from that?
Well, he said he still believes in Evan Neal. That's fine. And Evan Neal is, rehabbing. He had an ankle issue. He had some surgery done. He should be fine for the spring. But just because they believe in Evan Neal, look, he was the 7th pick 2 years ago of Joe Schoen. So he's not going to throw him out right now. But they are going to actively, I think, in free agency, try to sign somebody who can play that position as a swing tackle. They may have to spend a little more to get a guy who's a little better, that if Evan Neal falters again, we can put this guy in, because their depth was not good last year. We know that, not good. And Joe Schoen was talking about the offensive line, and he said when he scouts, when he's been watching tape and everything of the last season, he said, I like to watch what other teams do just against us. So when he was watching defensive linemen of other teams, he was watching them against the Giants, and he came away saying, look, our offensive line was not good enough. Yeah, I just, you can see it. It was just not good enough. We didn't make enough plays. The communication wasn't good. He said it was clear that we had guys, our depth was not good, and we had practice squad guys in there playing, and you could tell that it just was not work. So he said, I've got to improve the starting unit. I've got to improve the reserves. Will that be with the number 6 pick in the draft? I doubt it. Don't forget, free agency comes first, and they will sign a lineman, maybe 2, maybe more. They need to build up the depth, and they need to have a security blanket in case Evan Neal is, let's face it, unless he's a bust.
Yeah, and I believe that those offensive linemen are going to come from free agency, because when we talk about Andrew Thomas, he came around in his 2nd year. Evan Neal going into his 3rd year, we're still waiting for him to come around. So if you do take a lineman at 6, he may not be a plug-and-play guy. He may take another year, and I don't think Giants fans have another year of waiting to see a top-tier offensive line pick or top-tier draft pick having to wait a year to finally a year or 2 years to finally come around. Paul, you're out in Indy for the rest of the week. What's your week like, and what are you watching? Like, when you watch from the media standpoint, whether it's on-field workouts, you're having conversations with other GMs, agents, what's the day-to-day like for you out there?
Well, Brian Daboll is not going to speak to us. So, the formal interview periods with the Giants is over with Joe Schoen on Tuesday morning. Well, Wednesday starts interviews, defensive linemen, linebackers, starting at 8 a.m. And then you go through the week with the quarterbacks and receivers, which is obviously always a big week, a big day when they speak, of both on Friday. And we didn't talk about wide receivers, but, if you want to say right now, better position group for the number 6 pick in the draft, wide receiver is very high on that list. Because I don't know if the quarterbacks are going to fall in that thing at 6. The top 3 could be gone. I don't know if the next tier is really worth the number 6 pick there. The J.J. McCarthy's and the Penix and the Bo Nix, are they going to be worth 6? Most people would say no. It only takes 1, though. So all those interviews take place. And then obviously, you've been at Indy, a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants. Everyone's got to eat, right? So there's a lot of agents around. There's a lot of hotels around, a lot of hotel lobbies. So there's some of that, certainly. People may be having one drink too much and saying a little too much, things like that. But you got to keep your ears open. You got to keep your eyes open out here. It's the same place every year. Every team and people have their little nooks and crannies they like to hang out in. But you get a lot done. As Joe Schoen said, this is not the time to make hot and heavy draft trades. That's usually a month from now at the owners' meetings. This is more ground setting. Maybe Joe Schoen goes to a GM who's got one of the top 5 picks and says, you have any thought about maybe trading down? You know what I mean? Let's keep in contact, so I don't have to waste my time later. The guy says, I don't think so. Okay, maybe, Schoen will cross him off the list and we'll put him down on the list. So a lot of that stuff, they all have guys they are comfortable with, maybe guys not as comfortable with. So, you know, there'll be a lot of talks. You know, as we said, he's going to talk to reps for Barkley, for Xavier McKinney, for Tyrod Taylor, and for plenty of other guys, just because he didn't mention them. So there's a lot of groundwork that gets done here. Maybe not, you know, no deals signed, sealed, and delivered, but frameworks are in place. And the opposite, where they say, you know what, we're not close right now, and we may have to move on. So it's, you know, this is a real NFL convention, and you know, as you know, the players, it's big for them. You know, Caleb Williams' interviews with the media on Friday are going to be big time event because, you know, he's got some questions about, you know, his personality, the way he goes about things. That's all going to be out there, and teams will be watching. And plus, all the teams have, you know, one-on-one interviews in private with these players. So this is where they really get to know them. And, you know, with quarterbacks especially, you can't know enough about these guys. They know everything they can about them, and they still screw up half the time. So with these picks. So this is a very important week down here, really important. You know, you get better here, and it helps you. You don't do a great job down here, and it sets you back.
Never a dull week at the NFL Combine. Paul, thanks for coming on and talking Giants football with us, and enjoy Indy, my man.
All right, Brandon, thanks.